Hannah Montana is a cultural icon, the voice of a generation, the face of a billion-dollar franchise. And what do billion-dollar franchises do? They sell merch. And not just lip gloss and dolls and bags and clocks and guitars and trash cans and snow globes and pool floats and landline phones, but also games. Well, yeah, board games, but also video games. And I played and ranked all of them. There are technically 12 console titles, but only 8 if you don't count the ports, and
15
Flash games that were hosted on DisneyChannel.com. There are also technically way more Hannah Montana Flash games out there, but I'm gonna stick to the officially licensed games for obvious reasons, which makes a total of
23
games altogether. But wait, there's more! There are still even more official games. 4 different physical plug-and-plays plus 1 handheld game. But unfortunately, I didn't play these since they couldn't be emulated, and buying them online while in Australia proved to be difficult, which is disappointing because I really did want to play them for the video, but they're not impossible to get, so if there is enough interest in these obscure Hannah Montana experiences, please let me know and I'll see what I can do. So we're back to the original
23.
And to keep track of the quality of each game as we go along, we turn to our handy-dandy tier list, or what I like to call the Rockstar meter. Using Hannah Montana songs as a vibe for each category, at the bottom is I Want My Mullet Back, where mullet equals money if you had actually bought the games in this tier. While this isn't a Hannah song, it does appear in the show, and I feel it embodies the general essence of Billy Ray Cyrus, making it perfect for the bottom tier. The next tier is Nobody's Perfect, because hey, everybody makes mistakes, everybody has those days, and if nobody is perfect, the games in this tier are also far from it. The middle tier is Ordinary Girl, for games that, as the title says, are just ordinary or otherwise average. I Got Nerve is the penultimate tier, for games that definitely have some good qualities, aka nerve, but aren't quite enough to reach the top. And for the top tier, I tossed up between some of my favorite Hannah Montana songs, particularly We Got the Party and Rockstar, but in the end, I went with
Cheese turkey. Say what? Say what? Cheese turkey. Say what? Say what?
Sure, this one also isn't technically a Hannah song, but it's one of the best songs in the show, and Jackson is arguably the best character. So any songs that reach this level are as golden as the cheese on Oliver's mom's homemade jerky. There's no real science to ranking a Hannah Montana game. Most of these games are made for kids, and at the end of the day, it's just not that deep. But I will still be looking to judge the Hannah elements like singing, dancing, and fashion, the Miley elements like school, friendship, and family, if it all feels accurate to the show and or characters, and overall if the actual gameplay itself is fun or if it's just low effort and lame.
Press A to have the best of both worlds. Sweet niblets, you're a rock star.
So with all of that out of the way, let's get gaming, gamers. Starting with the 2006 title for the Nintendo DS. In this game's story, someone knows that Miley is secretly Hannah Montana, which, in the words of Miley herself, is totally uncool. You play to uncover who's behind the mystery with the help of these super high-tech spy gadgets of a magnifying glass and flashlight. Each new clue leads you to different areas of the map, and talking to each clue's related NPC sends you in other directions to look for more clues, hopping from the mall to the school to the mall to the school to the beach to the mall to the beach to the school. And that's pretty much all of the gameplay. There were a few other mini-games of sorts, like trial and erroring through clunky conversations to pick the right options, with dialogue like not very girls insults, and at one point Jackson even used the slip and slide word, which would never fly if this were a real Michael Mouse production. I did like the details in each map, the transition music between areas, and the specific soundtrack song that played when you entered a dark room, which was giving early 2000s divorced dad rock. But otherwise, the gameplay was very tedious and more like a wild goose chase than solving a mystery. Aside from this dress-up minigame where you can create outfits but not actually wear them in the game, there were no real Hannah elements, and there weren't really any Miley elements either. Mostly just detective elements, which is not my ideal Hannah Montana game. The worst part was when I finished the first act only for them to pull the "it was all a dream" card, but then immediately retcon that and have it all happen again IRL. Maybe things got more interesting in the second and third acts, but since I doubt it, this one is just an ordinary girl. The next game, Hannah Montana Music Jam, was also for the DS, and this is one that I played over and over as a kid. But obviously, I need a little refresher, just for the sake of professionalism. And here we're met with the glorious, infamous, crunchy 3D renders of the DS. But if you just ignore that, the conflict here is that Savannah Starr, a new pop star, is climbing the charts to rival Hannah Montana. And she plays her own instruments, which is bad because Hannah doesn't. Oh, no. And coincidentally, a new girl named Josie has also just moved to town. Miley balances her personal life with her celebrity life by completing fetch quests and minigames like playing the guitar or drums, ice skating, racing RC cars, photo shoots, and making music videos, most of which are not as exciting as they sound. The minigames tended to go on forever and were really tedious. Not to mention how random some of them were too, because why is Miley incredible at figure skating? And what do RC cars have to do with Hannah Montana? Even if some aspects were a little questionable, it was still fun to navigate, and I also really liked the silly humor that felt true to the show, like being coerced into wearing Liberty spikes, all of Jackson's dialogue that was very on brand, and this particular exchange between Hannah and her photographer, which once again clearly did not get screened by the mouse, but it was pretty funny. I didn't finish the whole game, but I do remember the ending from when I was 8, and spoiler alert, the new girl Josie was Savannah Starr the whole time, just like Miley is Hannah. They hash out their differences in the end, and everything is fine. I think even with its faults, this game still holds up. There's a lot of variety, so even when one minigame does feel a little repetitive, there's still more to the game beyond it. And for having a solid mix of both Hannah and Miley gameplay, even if they're a little on the low-res side, I think that this game goes in I Got Nerve. Spotlight World Tour released for the PS2 and the Wii, but since both versions are virtually the same, I just played the Wii version. There's not a story here, but there are cutscenes, complete with mocapped 3D models, voice-acted lines, and laugh tracks to remind you to laugh at the hilarious comedy.
The first stage of the first night of Hannah Montana's first... Jackson, you're making a mess of the stage before I've even used it.
Never used it?
It's clearly not the original actors, but they did an okay job, I think. Even if the dialogue was a little cringe, and they kept saying sweet to everything that happened.
Sweet, 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 sweet. I'm gonna play some air guitar in this one.
The main gameplay loop is performing concerts as Hannah, timing on-screen movements with the Wiimote. As is common with the Wii's motion controls, it didn't always track all of my amazing choreography, but that's more of a hardware issue than the game's fault, so I'll let it slide. I thought this game would just be about the dancing, but there were other features too, like shopping and dress-up, and minigames like signing and photo shoots. These all took a back seat to the performances, but they were nice additions to break up the monotony. And they really committed to the realism of wandering around the mall to shop, including awkwardly riding up and down the escalators in complete silence. and the fans that got starstruck when they saw Hannah before being paralyzed with fear. And with all their little voice lines as you pass by them,
Do these shoes make my feet long?
it felt very GTA-esque, which I'm personally counting as a positive. Plus, the so very mid-2000s fashion choices made up for any uncomfortableness that might have occurred, so it was fine. For my tastes, the shopping and dress-up were the highlight over the actual concerts, but when the motion controls were behaving, the dances could also be pretty fun too. This one is clearly only about Hannah and not Miley, but this is exactly what I'd want out of a Rockstar simulator as a kid, and it caters to the Hannah side well. Even with the jank, from awkward animations to weird hair physics, I'd say this game was still pretty sweet. And it deserves to go in cheese jerky. That was a lot of console games. I think it's time for a Disney Channel break.
Sweet niblets! Hannah Montana will be right back on Disney Channel.
Since these are Flash games, they also deserve a little lenience in their rankings because they weren't necessarily made to be fully fleshed out or played for hours. But I do still think they should be engaging to an extent, have some replayability, and feature the right dose of Hannah and or Miley content for any tween girl in 2008 to be able to get her fix. I played these in a random order and started with Crank Up the Concert. Going into this video, I expected to see many rhythm games, and this is one of them. It interestingly had 3D elements made in Unity, but I am curious to see what that Hannah model looks like up close.
She's really good.
I'm not the biggest fan of rhythm games, but they can be fun if they're done well, which this one was not. I think they spent more time on the 3D aspect than the actual gameplay because none of the beats were actually on beat. I can't play the song to prove it because it's copyrighted, but since it was so out of rhythm, you could really put any song over this gameplay and it would be about the same experience. Even after giving this one some Flash game grace, this was just bad. The only point of a rhythm game is to have rhythm, and it didn't even do that. I get that it's a lower difficulty for kids, but it can be easy and be on beat. Because of that, and because I do not trust that crusty Hannah model, this is going in Nobody's Perfect. And it only doesn't reach the bottom tier because I fear we can still do worse. Next up was Roomy Room Redo, which is a room decorating game. Having played my fair share of dress-up games, room decorators, etc., you know, the girly classics, I feel qualified to judge if a game in this category is good or bad. And this one isn't bad. It doesn't have tons of in-depth controls and creative freedom or anything, but it did still have a lot of options to decorate with and cute stuff too, which is important because if I'm gonna decorate, the decorations should be appealing. Sure, some options might look a little dated, but there was nothing that looked poorly done or thrown in just to fill out the game. The choices were all very on brand for the theming of the show too, from guitars to cowboy boots to surfing, very appropriately Hannah Montana. I ended up with a very maximalist room, but even after using so much stuff, there was definitely room for replayability to keep mixing things up. Sure, room decorating isn't directly related to the show, but this is just one of those girly Flash game staples that every site needs to have, so it gets a pass. And for being decently designed, it's going into I Got Nerve. In the next game, Rico's Surf Shop Challenge, we take a step away from the busy life of a rock star and focus on the surf shop from the show. This essentially played like a tycoon game, stocking items each round to meet the demands of customers, which change each day depending on the weather. There were whispers of a more in-depth tycoon game, like managing inventory and setting prices, but overall it was pretty surface level. There was no guarantee what items customers would want to buy, which was part of the challenge, but it felt a little too random sometimes, and I actually got worse as I continued to play. Though I may have been overthinking my strategy, or I'm just not good at the game anyway, so that's on me. Even though this wasn't technically Hannah related, it is pulled straight from the show. And while it could have had more to offer and maybe had less zombie-like beachgoers, it definitely wasn't the worst, but was just average. So it goes into Ordinary Girl. You're not gonna believe it, but we've encountered another rhythm game. Rock the Beat. This time, the game stresses in the instructions, and not to mention the title, that it's important to click the right buttons on beat. And yet, it still feels vaguely not on beat. It's not in rhythm exactly, but the songs that the beats are set to are more of a loose suggestion. It is at least better than that other game, and the Hannah model this time is also much nicer than Potato Montana. Though, if I can be a hater for a moment, her dancing does leave a little to be desired. It's giving freestyle dance teacher.
Hi, I'm Renata Bliss, and I'm your freestyle dance teacher.
As you play through different difficulties, you're able to unlock more outfits, which also all have the same copy and paste hairstyle, but that's just a personal nitpick. Hater time over. Otherwise, there's not really much to say about this game. It's straightforward, if a little lackluster, and I like the idea of having incentive to play by unlocking outfits. It's another game that's not bad, but not exactly good either, so it's going into Ordinary Girl. Miley's Malibu Manicure is exactly what you'd expect from the title. Another rhythm game! No, just kidding. It's about manicures. I gotcha, didn't I? Another game I can flaunt my girly flash game expertise with. And in my expert opinion, this one also isn't too bad. Though by nature of what a game only about manicures is, there's not too much to judge it on in the first place. There are a lot of color and pattern options and different shades to pick within each color, which is a nice touch. Then you can add rings or stickers to the nails, and then you're done. That's the whole game. There's some replayability, of course, and a decent variety in choices, but again, it's just nails, which is a little basic, so it's yet another Ordinary Girl. While we're on the track of girly game staples, we've done the room and the nails, so now it's time for the makeup in Beauty and the Beat. And as the girly game's judge, jury, and executioner, this is one that does not stand in my good graces. There are lots of color options again, but only, like, in theory. Because the opacity is so low that you can barely see half of the choices when you use them. Sure, this was based on 2000s makeup, which tended to be more light and casual instead of crazy 2016 beauty guru glam. But also, the makeup is the whole point of the game, so it should, just an idea here, actually be visible? There are also options to change the girl's hair and accessories, including glasses if you want to cover up everything you just did. And there's also a memory mode, which is virtually unplayable because how am I supposed to tell the difference between 20% opacity teal and 20% opacity turquoise? Anyway, I find it impressive that they managed to create a makeup game that's this lame, and yet I still feel that we are yet to reach rock bottom, so this is getting sent to Nobody's Perfect. To round off the last of the creative girly games, we're playing the dress-up game, Rockstar Fashion Challenge. Except it's not strictly a dress-up, but a memory scavenger hunt dress-up hybrid, dressing Hannah in the right clothes found in her dressing room under a time limit. I was always drawn to this game when I was younger for the dress-up aspect, but even as a kid I disliked the actual gameplay. Not just because I'm not big on memory games, which, hot take here, are kind of lazy design, but because the clothing options are limited and the random outfits that Hannah gets dressed in are usually pretty mismatched. Miss Montana, the fashionista herself, would never go out on stage in something this fugly. Are you serious? Someone call the fashion police. There is a freeform dress-up function where you can make your own outfits, but with such limited options, it's not very fun. This definitely seems like one of the first Flash games that they rushed out just to have something in the Hannah Montana games section, and you can tell. So it belongs in Nobody's Perfect. And with that, let's get back to the console games.
Eat doggies. Let's get back to Hannah Montana on Disney Channel.
Switching gears to a different platform, next is the Java game Hannah Montana in Action for mobile phones. As an older cell phone game, it wouldn't be fair to judge this on the same level as the other console titles, but I am still going to judge it, just with a little lenience. I was surprised right away to see that there was a story mode, because I just expected a more basic minigame, given the platform and the limitations of the console. Hold on, I'm getting an important phone call from future Dream Jelly. Go ahead. I'm making a complete what of myself? There is no story mode? It's just the same minigames reused in either an endless mode or timed levels? Well, that was a letdown. Even with no story, there are still minigames, 3 to be exact. Making t-shirts for charity by pressing the right button combos, taking timed pictures at a photo shoot, and performing by dropping the right colored notes into the crowd. It's nice that both Hannah and Miley elements are included, though the gameplay is kind of dull and repetitive. I liked the sprites of Miley and her friends, but the t-shirt making was another random choice for a minigame. This is 1/3 of the game. They couldn't think of anything else that was more thematically appropriate. You could also kind of change Hannah's outfit, but the background music that played while you did it, with long stretches of quiet sound broken up by abrupt, very loud screeches, kinda killed the vibe. Overall, I could definitely see myself not caring about the quality as a kid, and still just playing this on my mom's phone when I was bored. But does that mean it should get a pass now? I don't think so. Nobody's perfect here. Moving on. Into 2009, we enter the era of Hannah Montana the movie and its subsequent games, starting with the DS title. I have some higher expectations for the movie games because the only real requirement for all the others is that Hannah Montana just shows up at some point. Whereas these should, in theory, be based on the movie and have a kind of checklist of things that should be included. Wearing a shirt that looks like a Dan Flash's complicated pattern design,
The more the lines crisscross and the patterns overlap.
we're thrown right into the action of a performance, where Hannah is put to work doing everyone's job for them, but only like a little bit. I love this concept of a famous singer just wandering around during their set and poking at everyone's instruments instead of actually singing. And maybe you're tired of me saying this, but none of these instrument minigames were on beat again. I don't like this. And then you're in Tennessee, which seems abrupt, but it does follow the plot of the movie. Country life comes with completing basic fetch quests and riveting 10-second minigames, like scrubbing overalls and moving watermelons. But it wasn't long after that the resemblance to the movie began to dwindle. There's a farmer's market from the movie, the county fair that's not in the movie where you play carnival games, and a petting zoo, which does appear in the movie, but only briefly and certainly not as a stage for Hannah Montana. This was not only strange, but also goes against Miley taking a break from performing as Hannah, aka the entire plot of the movie, for those not in the know. This was such a letdown, not just as a Hannah game, but for a game based on the movie specifically. I wouldn't expect it to be a one-to-one recreation, but something like a chicken coop building game or a performance of Hoedown Throwdown in the barn would have made way more sense than Hannah Montana dances in front of some ostriches.
This ostrich thinks I'm a lady.
I could forgive the lack of movie accuracy if the rest of the game wasn't half-assed and boring, but that's exactly what it was, so for all of its crimes against fashion, ostriches, and Hannah Montana fans, this one goes in I Want My Mullet Back. After that disappointing experience, I had reluctantly high hopes that the same title for other consoles would be a bit better. I played the PC version and completed the tutorial just as a precaution, but I'm glad that I did because it taught me like 15 different moves all at once, all with different key combos, and then just expected me to memorize them all for the performance without any extra on-screen help. Is this a kid's game? I'm overwhelmed. I guess it wasn't that hard. Some of the moves were easy to recognize, like point right arrow key, but there was still a decent learning curve. This game, while more advanced and a lot more visually appealing, actually had all the same beats as the DS version. First, the performance, with wandering around stage, though the minigames were a lot better this time around. Then you head to Tennessee, read the exact same dialogue, finish the same fetch quests, ride a horse, which is new, and head to the farmer's market. After clothes shopping, with more variety compared to the DS's fashion travesties, we're back at the fair playing carnival games again for some reason, and then at the petting zoo herding pigs into their pens for some reason. Hannah performs at the zoo again, though it's technically a dream sequence this time, and while I stopped here in the DS game, I played a little further to complete a non-canon compliant stage of wandering around a university campus, and I quit later when some random cheerleader gave me a fetch quest, because I'm not doing that. I honestly understand padding for time and taking creative liberties, but again, the whole plot of the movie is right there, and for a tie-in game, this has barely anything to do with it. Though, while still disappointing, it wasn't as bad as the DS version, so I will be very generous and put this one in Ordinary Girl. All that wandering around the petting zoo has made me tired. I need a break from the consoles, so with my parents' permission, I headed back to DisneyChannel.com.
The best of this world means Hannah's coming back on Disney Channel.
Hotshot Photo Pro has a very simple premise. Take pictures of Hannah and avoid blurry or obstructed photos. The theming here is pretty on brand, glamorizing how exciting it must be to walk down the red carpet, and Hannah herself is there. There is a bit of a challenge in trying to time the right shots, and the camera-themed UI is also a nice touch. It's not great, but not totally boring, just very middle of the road. Another Ordinary Girl. With the next game, Wireless Quest, I have to admit, I'm going in with a bit of a bias, as this was one of my top played Disney Channel games as a kid, but I will try to remain impartial. The goal is to find Miley's diary that Jackson has hidden, using your cell phone to search for clues that lead you on a goose chase around the school. The clues can be straightforward in their meaning, but still require a scavenger hunt to fully solve. Like, okay, moose is the clue here, but where is the moose? Luckily, I had enough residual knowledge taking up valuable space in my brain to remember how to navigate the clues, but for the average player, it might not be so easy.
I think I know more about
Wireless Quest.
than you do.
The map and clues are also randomized after every round, so there's a lot of replayability. Whether it's just my bias showing or not, I still found this game very creative and engaging and fun. It's replayable, makes you think, has a phone that's fun to mess with, and though it's all Miley instead of Hannah, it's still accurate to the show. While it's not perfect, I think it's pretty close, and deserves a spot in Cheese Jerky. Next is Rock the Stage, not to be confused with Rock the Beat, because this one is not another rhythm game, but a match game. Not a match 3, but matching like groups of things together to clear them, whatever that's called. Although the gameplay is very simple, the production value seemed relatively high. There are animations, sound effects, transitions, and it is pretty visually exciting with all of the Hannah theming. But maybe that's to make up for the game being very simple, because even if that limo moves around, we're still just matching gems here. Is this really rocking the stage? It's not totally low effort, though I do still find licensed puzzle games to be generally lazy, so this one's going in Ordinary Girl. With the next game named Soundboard Mix-Up, I thought I was in for a soundboard with sound effects to play with, but it was an actual game where you have to press the right keys to manage Hannah's soundboard as she performs. This is another one that's not super engaging, but the concept is definitely more unique, and it's a nice take on a Hannah-related game where you don't actually play as Hannah herself. Her dance moves were yet again a little weird, since they were rehashed from that other game, but honestly, if I were playing this as a kid, I probably wouldn't even notice or care. There's enough of a challenge that the game's not too easy, but it's also just pressing letters on the keyboard, so it's not exactly a banger. Yet another ordinary girl. Full disclosure again, Jammin' with Hannah is another game that I played extensively as a kid, and although it is another rhythm game, I knew it specifically as the hold your keyboard like a guitar game, because in the instructions you're directed to do just that. There are other game modes where you can play normally, but having your keyboard essentially sub in as a Guitar Hero controller is way cooler. And if that wasn't enough, we finally got a rhythm game that's on beat. When I was younger, I thought I was insane at this game, and playing it now, I realize it's just really easy. But that just means that I'm also incredible at it as an adult. I was genuinely having so much fun playing because the guitar controls really lended a lot to the experience. And I'm usually not great at Guitar Hero-esque games because I just get overwhelmed and press all the wrong buttons, but this game is made for elementary schoolers, so I was truly jammin', as the title promised. Not only is the gameplay super fun, but there's an unlock shop too, where you can buy new songs, difficulties, visuals, and special moves. Hannah's is alright, but after seeing Jackson's, I made it my mission to play until I achieved it. Look, he's really doing it! This is the best day ever. The game can still be a bit buggy at times, or a little uninspired with the note choices during certain songs, but obviously I still had a great time, especially with a Flash game, so this definitely belongs in cheese jerky. Jackson's Beach Treat Delivery is seemingly one of the most iconic Hannah Flash games out of the collection, though I can't even really say why. I just feel like everyone remembers playing this one specifically, including myself, so we'll see if it lives up to the hype. You play as Jackson delivering milkshakes on the beach to the other characters, avoiding obstacles along the way. And it is fun enough, but after you've delivered one milkshake, you've pretty much delivered them all. Maybe I'm just too skilled of a gamer to see any challenge, but it was really easy and really repetitive, so it felt a little boring. There are voice-acted lines from each character, which is a nice addition, though hearing them ask for a caramel sundae for the 18th time in a row.
I would definitely go for a caramel sundae right now.
I would definitely go for a caramel sundae right now.
I would definitely go for a caramel sundae right now.
Also got a bit old. And you could also totally tell that Robbie Ray had no idea why the producers of the show wanted to record voice lines of him asking for a strawberry milkshake.
I'll have a strawberry milkshake.
And I think that's great. The theming is nice and accurate to the show, there's details put into the map design, obstacles, and voice lines, and I personally found the drink fill sound effect to be very satisfying. It's no wireless quest, but it is still pretty iconic, so it should probably go in Ordinary Girl, but I'm putting it in I Got Nerve because it's nostalgic and I like it and I make the rules around here, okay? I was a little wary of the next game, Switcheroo, because the movie tie-in games have obviously not had a great track record for being anything other than low-effort cash grabs, but the premise of this one is at least based on a specific scene from the movie, so it checks that box. You run around at a restaurant switching between Hannah and Miley to keep up appearances with both your date and the mayor. Kind of like a Mrs. Doubtfire situation if you haven't seen the movie. There are power-ups to collect and switches to flip before heading to each stage, and as I played it, it was really reminding me of Pizza Party Pickup, another iconic Disney Channel Flash game, though it arguably wasn't as exciting or fun as Pizza Party Pickup, and it was over pretty soon. I'm sure with a lot of these, the challenge is close to non-existent because these games were not intended for neurodivergent 26-year-old YouTubers, but challenge aspect aside, the gameplay was still just kind of not great. But I appreciate finally having a movie game with actual relevance to the movie, and it is a decently engaging arcade-like style, so I think it deserves Ordinary Girl. We take things back to the beach with Oliver's treasure hunt, scavenging the beach to metal detect for treasures, navigating around the other characters with their PNG heads pasted onto cartoon bodies. The metal detector has a limited battery, so you have to act fast, and Rico tries to steal your treasures as you find them, so you also have to be on the lookout for his RC plane and duck to avoid it. While the gameplay is yet again relatively simple, it's not totally soulless. The animations are clean, and there's 15 different treasures to find, which makes for a nice variety and breaks up the monotony. I can also appreciate that while Oliver doesn't technically, canonically, metal detect in the show, as far as I remember, the concept is fun and makes yet another beach game still feel unique. For the quality, challenge, and variation, I think it's fair to put this one into I Got Nerve. And with that, we've officially played all of the Flash games. Time to round off the last of the console titles.
Smokin' Oaken. We're back with Hannah Montana on Disney Channel.
The second and only other game for mobile phones is Secret Star. With the last Java game as my only reference for mobile Hannah games, I wasn't expecting much out of this one, but this time it played like an RPG, and there was an actual story. Hannah's rival Michaela from the show is trying to steal all her fanas. So Miley schemes to sabotage Michaela's beach meet and greet to perform a concert herself. But to make it to Hannah's performance, you have to also manage your life as Miley, avoiding Robbie Ray, doing your homework, and helping out Jackson at the surf shop. And this is all just in the first act. There are mini-games like making smoothies at Rico's, studying for your math quiz, collecting food in the lunch line at school, and performing a concert, which really adds a lot of variety to the story. You can also change your outfit as Hannah or Miley and talk to NPCs around the game areas. Admittedly, as a small-scale mobile game, you could complain about the lack of engaging gameplay if you really wanted to nitpick. But what it lacks in technical capabilities, it definitely makes up for in meaningful touches, like the inclusion of both Hannah and Miley elements, or the fully detailed sprite maps, down to the spices on the kitchen counter and that really weird legs table thing from the show. There's clearly a lot of thought put into this game. If it had been made for a more powerful console, I bet it would have been a certified Hannah classic, and it's going into cheese jerky. And finally, we're down to our very last game, Rock Out the Show for the PSP. I never had my own PSP growing up, but I've had good experiences playing other PSP titles for the channel, so I was excited to see what this one had to offer, only to be immediately put off when I was presented with this. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for quirky animation. I mean, this looks exactly like it's cut from my High School Musical video, so I can't really judge. But the animation mixed with the dialogue, voice acting, and incessant laugh tracks between every line was not giving me a good vibe.
I got some nasty bug that's got me sicker than a chicken from eating Jackson's apple pie. I'm not gonna be able to go on tour with you. Sorry, honey.
Sweet niblets!
Why did that need a laugh track? She just said her catchphrase that wasn't even funny. Cutscenes aside, it feels only appropriate that we end on another performance rhythm game, and Hannah is 3D animated when on stage instead of a cutout PNG, at least. But that's not the only gameplay here, as you can decorate the stage, manage the lighting and choreography, and choose the outfits of Hannah and her dancers. Customizing your own concert is a fun idea that didn't really appear in any of the other games, so I can appreciate the creativity. I do suspect that without other minigames or awkward shopping at the mall, it might start feeling stale after a while, but every concert unlocks new options, so that does offer some variety. I do feel disappointed that the one PSP title didn't offer much more than some of the DS or Flash games, but I don't think this one is terrible. It may just be that I'm very Hannah'd out from playing so many games, but this just feels like it blends together with all of the rest, so it goes in Ordinary Girl, with the rest of the very average games. And with that, we've come to the end of our journey. When looking over the tier list, I feel pretty confident in all of the rankings. I honestly thought there would have been way more D and F tier games, but most of them weren't that bad. But I've also been listening to the same, 4 Hannah Montana songs that all the games reuse for weeks now, and my judgment might not be the best. So if you have thoughts of what you'd change, or if you've played any of the games yourself, let me know. This has certainly been a journey, but I guess you could say it's all about the climb. Hi, welcome to Jelly TV, where I shout out a video that I think deserves some love. I recommend watching The Hannah Montana Movie is Genius by Zenny Games. If the game version of the Hannah Montana movie was confusing and you need a refresher on the actual plot, this video's got you covered. Zenny and her commentary are so funny, recapping the story and stressing how ridiculous it is along the way, making for a very fun watch whether you're familiar with the movie or not. A huge thank you to Daniel E. from ABQ, Kevin Evans, Bunny, Bunzo, Karis Desarun, Chumby, Hayden Campbell, Lojma Animal, Lou, Luna Stephenson, Mark Kent, Nighttime Coral, Online Grandpa 1, Paper Sam, Pharmamags, Pixel Puppy, Shaples, Theodore Nicolawilius, and the rest of my patrons for supporting me.